In this video, I'm going to walk you through a couple of steps that are really important in making the intermediate sketch fully defined. If you weren't able to get your sketch fully defined with all black lines this week, it should help with this specific assignment, but there's also a couple of tips and tricks that I think will help you throughout the advanced CAD class. So the first thing I want to do is on the second screen, I have the instructions up, and I'm just going to start from scratch on the intermediate sketch with a new sketch on the front plane. And I'm going to use the N key to be able to snap to a normal view. This will make it a lot easier as I follow the tutorial because I won't be skewed and I'll be able to see everything really clearly. The first part of the sketch is going to be a construction line, which is vertical and ends in the origin. So we're going to have the bottom endpoint coincident with the origin. And I can do that by selecting the line tool and then typing Q on my keyboard to make it a construction line. As I'm typing, I want to make sure that that vertical constraint shows up. If I start a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, you see it's not there. But if I know that it's vertical for the origin, I know that I'm going to create a line that has the right rules. I'm then going to type Q again so that my new line that it starts at the origin will be horizontal. And the next line that's vertical, I can just make without having to type Q. So I have two lines and one construction line that are defined that look approximately the same relationship and ratios as in the tutorial. The next thing I want to do is define a arc. I want to make sure that this is a 3-point arc. That's going to be important later. If I use a tangent arc, I'm actually going to end up with something that it won't let me define as the right shape. So I'm going to start here, and then I want to place the second endpoint. I don't need it to have a vertical relation. So I think I'm going to actually end up going a little bit further in just to make sure that that relationship doesn't show up there. That relationship later could make it hard to define the size that I want. And now I'm going to move the radius so that it shows up and looks approximately the same curvature as in the picture. Now I'm ready to make sure that the bottom endpoint of the arc is coincident. And I can do that by checking this checkbox. And I can see if I mouse over the coincident relationship, those two lines, the new line I just made and the line that I started with, are connected to each other. Now I'm ready to make a mirror of those lines so that I can have them on both sides of the shape and add a tangent arc. So I want to make sure I get from the menu a new type of arc between the tops of the two lines. Now I have a shape that looks approximately like the picture, and I'm ready to start adding some rules about this shape. The first thing I'm going to want to do is make sure that there's a tangent relationship between the line that I just drew and the lines that were there. So if I mouse over here, I can see that it has a tangent relationship with one of the lines, but not the second one. So how can I manually do this? Make sure all the tools are off, select the two lines, and from the pull-down menu, add tangent. Now if I look at both relationships, they're both there. The next relationship that I want to add is making the endpoint and the center point coincident. So now I can make those coincident, and now it's showing up with all of the rules that the tutorial specified. And I'm ready to start adding some dimensions. So I'm going to start with the radius at the top, which should be 75 millimeters. See, that makes a much bigger sketch. The distance between this, not this dot, the distance between the end dot and the bottom of the piece is 200 millimeters. The radius for this arc is going to be 125. And the distance between this dot and the bottom is going to be 50. So it doesn't look quite right because this is much longer and wider than I expect it to be. So I'm going to change this to be 125. And now not only does it look exactly like the picture, but all of my sketch is fully defined. Now I'm ready to add some of the internal geometries. If you want at this point, you can turn off show constraints just to make it a little bit easier to see. You can also take any of the dimensions and move the label to a different position if it's hard to read. So usually at this point, I like pulling things out just to make them a little bit easier to see. And now it's easy for me to see what I'm doing internally as I draw these new objects. So I'm going to do an offset outside arc, 40 millimeters inside the second arc. So I'm not going to use the arc tool. I'm going to use the offset tool. Offset. And at first it tries to bring everything in. So instead of doing that, escape. I want just that. And the distance between them is going to be 40. And now I have a offset arc that's almost fully defined, just the end points are not fully defined. Now I'm going to sketch a vertical line. I don't want it to be touching either of these sides, but I do want to make sure that as I sketch it, and I don't want it to be underneath this dot, but I do want to make sure as I sketch it that it is showing up with that vertical constraint. I'm going to click Show Constraints, and I can see that it's parallel to this other line, and this line is vertical, so it is vertical. Now I'm going to select a tangent arc, connect these two lines. And one of the things I want to do is mouse over this tangent relationship, and I see that it's tangent with the point above, but it's not tangent with the one below. So before I do anything else, I have to turn off all of the tools, select these two lines that need to be tangent to each other, and set the tangent relationship. It broke it a little bit, so let me go back and redraw that arc. And I might need, it's such a straight, it's too close together. So I might need to move this down a little bit just to be able to draw the arc and have it connect. There we go. All right, so now it's arced in the right direction. Before, the center point was on the other side. And so it wasn't going to let me define both of those as tangent. I can see if I mouse over this, it's tangent with the line above it, but not tangent with the line below. So if I click with the line below and I make it tangent, now it's fully defined. Now I want to use the same mirror tool to put these two lines on the other side. So I'll do that first by selecting the mirror line and then selecting the two lines that I want to mirror. Now I'm ready to do another tangent arc to connect these 2 points. And again, I want to, with the constraints turned on, I want to make sure that everything that is defined is tangent. So I have to make sure that this arc is tangent to both vertical lines. I can see it's tangent to the one on the left, but not the one on the right. So I'm going to add that relationship. And now both of the lines that it's connected to are tangent. Now I create a center point rectangle. And this is important because by starting drawing the rectangle in the center, it makes it easy for me to snap and make the center point coincident with my construction line. So there's fewer things that I have to define because now that is going to be fixed to a part of the drawing that already is fully defined. I'm ready to add the final dimensions. So the box is probably the easiest part. That is going to be 80 millimeters wide. It's going to be 20 millimeters high, and the bottom of the box will be 25 millimeters from the bottom. So now that box is fully defined. In terms of the light bulb shape that's within inside, that's going to be a cutout. I'm going to want to start the dimension from the end of the center line and go all the way down to the center point of the tangent arc, and that should be 100 millimeters. Now I have the overall size of the shape defined. You just have to define the two curves. So the first curve, the radius is going to be 40 millimeters. And then the second curve, the radius is going to be 15 millimeters. Once those are defined, it looks okay, but you can see there's one rule that didn't get propagated correctly. And that is that when I end at the tangent arc in my drawing at the top here, I thought that they were touching, but the points weren't touching. They were just very close to each other. I can change those 2 points to be touching by making a constraint. So I'm going to make those points coincident. And now if I zoom out, the sketch is fully defined. So most of the time you'll want constraints to be off because it makes your drawing very noisy. But if you're running into an issue where you don't have a fully defined sketch, click on this button, zoom in, and then actually mouse over each of these constraints to see what could be missing in the information that you need to make something go from a relatively close copy of the intended design to an exact copy of the intended design. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to meet with you in office hours to go over this or any other tricks for advanced CAD.